Hello everyone, welcome back to our Lee County Library Science Club. It's great to have you with us once again. Just want to remind you to please have your parents' permission and some supervision when you're doing these experiments with us. Now, throughout our series this year, we have talked a lot about atoms and molecules and how they are the tiny little microscopic building blocks of all the stuff in our world. Right? From this table to the floor, to the air, to the water in this cup, it's all made up of molecules, right? Which are different combinations of atoms. But there's a difference between the way the molecules behave in something like this plate versus the molecules inside you and me. Now, if we look at the big picture outside, okay, obviously I am a living being, and this plate is not, right? But what on the inside makes us different? As I said, we're all made up of atoms and molecules, but the molecules inside living things like humans, animals, plants, even bacteria, in these things, the molecules make another step of building block called cells. And the different types of cells are what make our body function. Okay, there's skin cells and blood cells and muscle fiber cells and all these different things that allow our body to perform its different processes. However, all cells have the same basic structure, and that is they have a cell membrane, which is the outer part of the cell, which is a structure of lipid and protein molecules that separates everything inside the cell from everything outside the cell. It also allows things to travel from outside to inside, like nutrients, or it allows things to leave the cell, like waste. In the middle of each cell is what's called the nucleus, and that is the control center of the cell. It's filled with DNA and RNA, and it tells the cell what kind of cell it's supposed to be and what type of functions that cell is supposed to perform. Throughout the cell, within the cell membrane, there's a gel-like fluid known as cytoplasm. Not only does cytoplasm fill up the cell and hold the organelles in place, it also is a good medium for chemical reaction. So any processes that the cell needs to have chemical reactivity for, that cytoplasm is a very fertile substance for that. Now, the last part I said was organelles. There are lots of different kinds, but they're all small organ-like structures within a cell that perform the different cell processes. The specific organelles within each cell are a little bit different depending on what kind of cell it is. Now, today, we're actually not going to be talking about any kind of cells that are in a human body. We're actually going to be talking about plant cells. Again, plants are also living things. They grow, they reproduce, they die, so they have cells in them. Their cells have all these same basic structures, a membrane, a nucleus, cytoplasm, and organelles. But plant cells also have one more structure, and that is called a cell wall. This is outside the cell membrane. It's a thicker, stronger structure made of cellulose that protects the plant cells and gives them structure and rigidity. Now, one really key thing to know about cells is that all the parts of the cell need water. That's right, over the entire cell, it's made up of almost 70% water. And that's because water is good for reactions, it's good for transport of nutrients, and it helps keep things flexible and moving within the cells. Now, I mentioned before there were lots of different types of cells within a human body. There are also lots of different types of cells within a plant. But the one we're going to focus on today is what's known as fiber cells. Now, you've probably all heard of fiber before. It's a pretty important thing for nutrition when we're eating, right? If you look at the nutrition facts label on your food, it says there's a fiber content. But what do those fiber cells do when they are alive in the plant? Well, the fiber cells specifically have a much thicker cell wall, and they're longer and skinnier than most other plant cells. So they are used for transporting water and other nutrients throughout the plant. And to do that, they use something we've talked about before called capillary action. Now, if you'll remember, capillary action is the ability of fluid to flow in narrow spaces without regard for external forces. So there's nothing pushing or pulling on the water when it's flowing through capillary action. It's water's own internal forces that cause that movement. So within plants, the fiber cells create those capillaries to allow the water to move all throughout the plant structure. And those fiber cells also give the plants their structure and their strength. One of the really cool things about trees is that the mature fiber cells in the inside are actually dead fiber cells. So what you have is living, growing fiber cells alongside the mature dead fiber cells running the length of the tree, giving it the ability to be both strong and flexible. It's kind of amazing, right? You've seen some trees out there that are growing maybe sideways and they're leaning way out here, and you look at it like, man, how does that stay up there? It's way too heavy. It should just break and fall off, right? But the combination of the mature dead fiber cells and the living growing fiber cells give that leaning branch a lot of strength, but also the flexibility to grow that direction and move when pushed by the wind or other forces. So what we're going to do today is actually demonstrate the flexibility and the movability of the fiber cells due to the movement of water. So what we're going to need for this experiment is some plain round toothpicks. Do make sure they're round and not the rectangular or square shaped toothpicks. You need a flat plate or other surface that they can lay on, some water, and then something to drop the water on it gently, like a straw or an eyedropper or a pipette, something like that. So we are going to start with 5 regular round toothpicks. What you need to do is take each toothpick and break it as close to the middle as you can get. But when you break it, you don't want to snap it all the way. You just want to crack it and then bend it so you have a little triangle of wood here. Do that for each of your toothpicks and put them with the centers touching on your plate. Now remember, it's pretty important that you don't actually snap them apart from each other. There needs to be a little bit of the toothpick still connected, so they're just kind of bent over like this. Next, you're going to take your straw or your pipette or your eyedropper or whatever, get some water in it, and then you're going to gently start to drop some water onto the toothpicks. And if they get pushed away, you can kind of push them back in. Now you don't want to do it so hard that the toothpicks start to float, just enough that the ends are really in the water. As you can see, as I've been talking, the toothpicks have kind of moved and they're shaping themselves into that nice, perfect star that we were looking for, aren't they? Now, what's making this happen? As we said before, wood is made up of a lot of fiber cells, right? And all cells need water for their structure, but the fiber cells especially move that water through them. So when the water gets into the cells, they actually swell a little bit. And that is what we see happening here. the water is entering at each of these break points, and it moves up the wood due to the capillary action within the fibers. And as the water travels up each piece of wood, it's swelling those cells. And as they swell, they try to straighten out back into their normal straight shape, but instead they press up against each other and they form our nice star. Understanding the way that water moves through cells within plants or animals and within our own bodies is really important to discovering different aspects of our biology and how our bodies function. So knowing the way that fiber cells within a plant move the water and are actually in their turn moved by the water is a beginning to help us understand what's going on inside the plant. And anything that helps us understand more about how cells function and how they interact with each other and their environment helps us to understand more about how our own bodies react to the world around us and help us know how to be prepared medically and scientifically for what people will face every day. Thank you so much for watching. It's wonderful to have you with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.